For today's webinar, we'll be looking at Maintenance Excellence Management, also known as MEM. Our presenter today is Ross Kennedy. Ross is the President and Founder of CTPM Australasia. Ross is recognised as Australasia's leading authority on total productive maintenance and CTPM's operations excellence through the TPM and Lean methodology we call TPM Cubed. During the webinar, we'll have question time and also interactive polls, and I'll show you how you can be involved. Here we have a control panel with a variety of functions. We have the raise the hand button for those with microphone capability. During our question time, which will be held at the end of the presentation, simply press the button to raise your hand and I'll unmute you so you can voice your question to Ross. If you do not have microphone capability, not to worry, just type any questions or comments in the control panel box provided. When we conduct an interactive poll, this will appear on your screen. Simply press one answer and press submit. Okay, let's get started. We hope you enjoy today's webinar, and we'll now pass you on to Ross for the presentation.
Right, good morning everyone, and welcome to our webinar on Maintenance Excellence Management. The areas we're going to cover today are the role of maintenance excellence in the operations excellence journey, the importance of a clear vision and strategy for maintenance excellence, why time lost should be the initial driver for maintenance excellence, and then making it happen and some key learnings. So just to put into context where this fits in, our webinars so far have been focused on our framework for TPM and Lean, what we call the Lean Burger, and maintenance excellence is the number 5 element. It is the first of our production support activities and probably the most important production support activity. We have above that the production activities of cross-functional and area-based teams. Without maintenance supporting the production activities, we don't get very far, so it's absolutely critical that maintenance becomes an integral part of the operations excellence journey. The other framework we look at that we use is the elements that make up maintenance excellence, and if we look globally, there are a number of different models people use. The one we've chosen or developed or evolved is one involving 10 elements. We see the first 3 are about leadership. If we don't have clear direction on where we're going through a vision and strategy, monitor how we're going, our performance measures, and having the right structure to get the ownership of our activities so they sustain, we're not going to get very far. The next part of the elements are capability elements, which are having the right skill set in our maintenance people and having the technical information to assist them in their work, having a good knowledge base. And then we have what we call the processes, and there's 5 core maintenance processes that we see. One's maintenance tactics. How do we go and identify what sort of preventive predictive maintenance or condition monitoring or whatever we want to do. Secondly, all about our materials, our spare parts. What should we carry? How should we get them repaired? How do we test them, etc. Planning and scheduling our work is extremely important. Then we have a contractor management. Do we use contractors to help us with times of peak load, like during shutdowns? Do we get contractors in to do specialised technical maintenance work that we don't have the expertise in-house to have? And finally, reliability engineering. How do we fix things if they fail so they don't fail again? So they're the 10 elements that we see are very, very important for maintenance excellence. But probably the critical thing at the very top is the vision. What are we trying to get all these elements to focus on is the important question. And to discuss that a bit further, I'd like to move on to a slide that was developed by initially from, or we adapted it from DuPont, when DuPont did a lot of reliability work back in the 1980s and 90s, and they're still doing it. They discovered through their research with the Sloan Management School in America, the leading university, that there are actually stable domains of behaviour in organisations, and they are very relevant in relation to maintenance. For example, you can have a maintenance group that is very focused on being the best at reactive maintenance. All they do is really focus on when things break, we get out there and fix them, but we fix them really quick. Our measure might be response time, and that tends to keep us all in this stable domain of how do we get really good at being reactive. Another stable domain they identified was what they call predictive or planned maintenance. This is about how do we go and find and fix it before it breaks. In other words, we do preventive or predictive type maintenance activities to go and inspect things and pick up on that the bearings are getting hot, for example, or vibrating, that we should plan out and have a planned maintenance period rather than having it waiting until it just fails in the middle of the night. And all the research shows us that to do good planned maintenance takes less resources, and that's the size of these coloured areas on the slide represent as we get more advanced, we get better performance out of our plant, and we also need less resources. The third one that came, that people have identified, or DuPont identified, was what we call TPM, find and fix defects. And we tend to use that as mechanistic. In other words, let's teach people how to find a defect. Let's go find a defect. Let's go fix a defect. And again, if we can find, for example, a broken grease line before it becomes a fail bearing, in other words, the grease line fails, we go and fix that up. It's a lot cheaper and quicker than going and waiting for the lack of grease feeding into the bearing to fail and having to replace a whole bearing assembly. So that was a TPM, and the mechanistic is just saying, let's go out and focus on the equipment. The fourth stable domain is what they call the learning one, where it's about developing your people. So that we develop their skills, and our focus is how do we get the people to develop to stop defects from getting into the place in the first place. So, and we call that organic, TPM and lean, and it's about operations excellence. Now the interesting thing is, as DuPont learned all this back in the 80s, they were very reactive. So they were starting from the bottom. So their first focus was, well, we've got to get the plan, because that's what they thought was the best at the time. And they went for the planned maintenance, and they did some great work and achieved some good gains from doing that. But what they realized was that they had sort of put a brick wall up, because it was all done by the maintenance people. It was the traditional maintenance approach. Let's go, maintenance, your job is to look after the plant, go out and do it. It was only when they started doing some benchmarks, they got to the point where they did all the planned maintenance and their performance still plateaued, and they thought they were doing pretty good until they went out and benchmarked, and they had a look at plants, especially over in Japan, that were applying TPM into their organisations, and these were plants that were of similar size, similar age, and making similar products as their own. Yet their maintenance costs were somewhere between 30 to 50% less than what DuPont was spending on maintenance in their plants. And that certainly got them thinking and trying to work out what it was all about. And they came back to this concept of stopping defects from getting in the first place. Defect avoidance was the way that if they could stop the defects from getting in, they didn't have to do all the maintenance work. They still had to do their planned preventive maintenance work. They still had to respond to, when lightning strikes, so to speak. But it was this defect avoidance that was the key. And that was all about production and maintenance working in harmony. And their more recent learning has been, when you're on this journey to maintenance excellence, if you are down in reactive or predictive, you don't look to the next stable domain. Look to the top. Look to the one that is ultimately where you want to get to, for example, operations excellence. And if you start working in that and starting to stop people from getting defects into the plant, it means, for example, you want to go and set up some good planned preventive predictive to support that. It's a lot easier if the equipment is in good condition, if the operators are taking care of it, of maintaining basic equipment conditions. There's no looseness, no contamination, lubrication's perfect. the planning activity and planning out what tactics you should use becomes a lot easier and a lot simpler to do. So the learning has been pick what stable domain you want and aim for it, and then set the rest up as required. So in summary, having that vision, that clear vision of what are we trying to get to with our maintenance activities and our elements is probably the key starting point, and that also the point that distinguishes between what we see as companies that are striving and achieving for maintenance excellence, rather than those just going out there and saying we're going to be great at, for example, planned, preventive, predictive maintenance. And that means a holistic view of the workplace. So let's have a quick question just to see. Thank you for all joining us. The question is just who has a clearly documented maintenance vision for their site that supports operations excellence? So yes, you have one that supports operations excellence, or you have a vision but it doesn't support operations excellence. It might be we're going to be the best preventive predictive maintenance group, or no, we don't have a vision, we just go out there and we do our maintenance. Just seeing if you could just put one of those three answers down, that would be really great. So far in our group we have here today, and we have people from where we got people from? We've got people from all different parts. So even we've got Zainab from Indonesia, from Tadab Mangyang, and we have people from throughout Australia and New Zealand as well on the webinar. So from our voting, the results show that 27% say yes, 45% have a vision but it doesn't support operations excellence, and 27% don't have one. So let's take that on board and look at what we mean by vision and strategy in a little bit more detail. So this is the second point we want to talk about, the importance of a clear vision and strategy for maintenance excellence. So before we talk about that, it's probably best to define it. What do we mean by a vision? What do we mean by a strategy? So vision, what do we want to become and by when? Too often people see vision as some sort of pie in the sky. We want to be the best. Well, when do you want to be the best, and how do you know you're going to be the best? It should be part of the vision. So it should be quite measurable and a time frame on it. Strategy is about how we're going to win. Strategy is a military term. It was originated from people going out trying to win battles, saying what's the way we're going to win the battle? What things do we have to focus on? And the key to strategy is keep it simple, don't have any more than 3 parts to it. Otherwise it becomes, people lose focus. A good example I use in the workshops is the Battle of Britain, when England were faced in the Second World War with the potential German invasion. They had to come up with a strategy to stop it, and they came up with 3 key strategies. One, bomb the airfields so that the Germans can't come at them. Secondly, if that doesn't work, understand when they're coming, develop radar. And thirdly, once we know they're coming and we've picked up on radar, let's shoot them out of the sky, let's have the best fighter plane. And they were the 3 key things they focused all their energies on to stop the invasion. So that's what I mean by strategy. So let's look at vision first. Example vision where operators impact on equipment performance. The reason for that, what I'm putting there is a comment. If you have, for example, a plant that's, say, a nuclear power plant where operators sit in a control room, don't go near the equipment at all, equipment's in perfect, pristine conditions, there are probably other strategies rather than TPM to support that, things like reliability center maintenance. They use that also in the aircraft industry. But if you've got operators who actually go and interact with the equipment, like at a mine site or a processing plant or a manufacturing plant where you have production lines, and the operators are interacting and have an impact on equipment performance, this is where the TPM and lean becomes absolutely critical. So an example would be within 5 years as a time frame, be externally recognized. So it's all very well saying we think we're the best, but it's someone to externally recognize. And what do you want to achieve? Well, 4 things. First one is that, as we've talked about operations excellence, it's the role of maintenance is to work in harmony with production and everyone else on site, support departments, to achieve those world-class targets, or what we call key success factors or goal-aligned performance measures which we have talked about previously in our webinars. Obviously ensuring optimum reliability, maintainability and process capability of all the production plant and equipment. Now the interesting one here is process capability. That process capability is basically having equipment that will produce a quality output in a consistent way. In other words, if you measure 50 items coming off your machine, they'll all be within the quality specifications. That means the machine is process capable of repeatable quality. The interesting thing is I often come across maintenance people, and you go and ask them, they go and say, well, our job is to make the machine run, so they go and fix it up and it runs. And you ask them, is it process capable? And they give you sort of a blank look saying, what are you on about, mate? It works, it runs. They don't quite understand or haven't been trained in process capability. So very important to have that one if you are making a quality output. Maintaining all facilities so they're safe, legal and functional, that's pretty obvious, and achieving at least 80% score for each of the 10 elements on a maintenance self-assessment survey. Having some instrument to measure your performance on for those 10 elements. We use what we call a maintenance self-assessment survey, which I'll talk about in a minute in more detail, but it's having something that you can actually score yourself against. So that's the vision, measurable, time frame, quite clear. From a strategy perspective, as I said, you only need probably 3 things, and the 3 we've identified is support production to implement TPM and Lean, because if we can get the operators to take care of the equipment, that's going to have a big positive impact on maintenance. Reduce time lost by maintenance personnel, so we free up resources, and thirdly, improve those 10 elements is, again, a very straightforward but effective strategy. So just going through those 3, A, support production. In our 2-day workshop, we use this slide about explaining what TPM is. It's about prevention at source for equipment. In other words, finding problems at the earliest possible time. And this is why companies that are successful in implementing TPM will traditionally reduce their maintenance costs by 50%. Not because they're getting rid of maintenance people, it's because they're actually extending the life of components, of all the parts that you keep replacing by fixing things up at the earliest possible time or finding problems at the earliest possible time. You're not replacing, for example, failed bearings, you're going and fixing damaged grease lines, which is a hell of a lot cheaper and quicker to do. So Toyota, when they went down the TPM path and discovered it and developed it, it was all about training the operators to know what to look for to find the defects so the maintenance could come in and fix them. They are the ears and eyes of maintenance. Change the equipment so it's easy for operators to find the problems, and create a maintenance support capability that can respond to small problems and issues identified by the operators. So it's really getting maintenance there if they want to go down and support production is about training operators to know what to look for so they can find the defects and learn more about the functioning of equipment to pick up on issues at the earliest possible time, and most importantly, having a maintenance capability that can respond rapidly so when operators do find problems, they get fixed, they get addressed, and the operators are motivated to continue to do it. So TPM, and the outcome of that is you reduce your maintenance costs by 50%. So focusing on that is a very, very important strategy. The second one is reducing time lost by maintenance personnel. This is about analysing time lost by maintenance people. What we find is getting your maintenance people together and evaluating where they get basically stuffed up. They come to work, try to do a good job, but they get distracted and they lose time. We use this survey as part of our maintenance self-assessment survey process, where we ask operators for a typical week. So, for example, last week, did you ever have any situations where, for example, you got called to a job and no one explained to you what it was about, and when you got there, had someone explain what the situation was, you could have come more prepared, you could have had information with you or tools with you. Instead, you go, oh, okay, I've got to go back and get the stuff and waste time. Obviously, tools not being immediately available, technical information not being immediately available or readily available, spare parts, maintenance consumables, all wasting time trying to find those. Slow retrieval of information from the computer system, so you need some data or some information, it takes forever to print it out or to go and find it, or having to put it into the system, and again, so many screens to go through, and it's a time-consuming exercise for you. The other one is lack of operator assistance at breakdowns. You call to equipment and operator disappears and has a cup of coffee, and then you go looking for them to come and test something or give you advice or give you some help. And responding to incorrect process adjustments. So because we've got trainee operators or operators who haven't been properly trained. So it's amazing when you collect all that information from your maintenance group. What we find in a typical Australian workplace, that the results come out something like this. And this is an example from a site or a company that had a couple of sites near each other, and we did their maintenance group. But we have done these surveys with maintenance people and companies throughout Australia, and 35% is pretty much the average outcome. And if you think about it, if you say, well, what's our vision? And we see a vision of something like 5% or even 10% would be very good practice. And we have a number of our clients who have got well below 10%, starting from 35. You are actually creating 25% more maintenance resource at no cost. So without having to employ anyone extra, you get 25% more maintenance resource. So it's quite a good thing to focus on, and I'll talk a bit more about it because it will also address the frustrations, because all those things just frustrate your maintenance people. Right, the next third point, just very quickly, is looking at those 10 elements. Now, we use, again, a maintenance self-assessment tool where for each element, this is the vision and strategy element, where we list out 10 aspects of vision and strategy. And what we've found, if we can take our maintenance people through a workshop and explain to them what best practice is for each of the 10 elements, and then have them assess themselves where they think their site is, where the maintenance department is, you'll get much better buy-in by the maintenance people to recognise, oh, maybe there's something we can do better, maybe we're not as good as we think we are, if they assess it themselves. Very easy for outsiders to come in and assess your site on these things, but then there will be no buy-in by your maintenance people. So we see having a tool to get your buy-in by your people is absolutely critical, and also to evaluate where you are on the journey. Now, we use we get everyone who attends our 2-day workshop to do a maintenance matrix, which is those 10 elements. It's a slightly simpler tool, but again, it's giving the score for where you are on each one of those elements, and we add those together and you get a percentage out of 100. We've been doing this for 12 years in Australia, and you can see over the 12 years there hasn't been too much change, and everyone's in that sort of what I'd call the predictive area band of maintenance. If you think of those 4 stable domains, hovering midway about there. Now, if you look at this, in 2008 we had 137 people do the rating. Just as an example, in 2008, just using this one because it had the biggest number of people, they're the companies who were doing the survey. So we're talking about major companies in Australia, and their starting point and their maintenance is around that 37–40% mark. So it's very useful to get a tool to assess yourself and then look at how do we move up that scale. Obviously, learning organisation operations excellence is around, well, above the 75. We target 80 plus for your maintenance. So just a quick question for you: who uses an assessment tool to monitor the progress of their maintenance excellence? So the maintenance people, a self-assessment tool preferably, where the maintenance people are saying, where do we think we are? So if you just very quickly, either yes, no, or not sure. So who's using the assessment tool in their maintenance department? And we typically do the full assessment once a year, get all the people to do it. We use that time lost one. We tend to do that every cycle so that we can see, are we making progress in addressing those issues. So the polls are still going, and I think they're tending to be a lot of people aren't using an assessment tool. The answer is here, 82% aren't using the assessment tool. I think there's a great opportunity there to use such a tool. Okay, just mindful of the time, moving on. Why time lost should be the initial driver for MEM? Well, as you could see, all those things are addressing frustrations, and what we've found in the Australian workplace culture is that what gets people engaged is if you address the what's in it for me. And if you go and ask your maintenance people, do you ever get frustrated if you can't find the tool you need at your fingertips, or you have to go searching for the technical information, or the spare part isn't there when you want it, you'll find most of them will say, yes, it's about time we did something about it. So it's a very good way to engage your maintenance people. It rapidly frees up resources to support addressing equipment defects found by the operators as they progress operator equipment management. So it's, the benefit for the company is you're freeing up your resources so you can actually start helping with the TPM activities of operator equipment management. And thirdly, it develops the improvement skills of your people so they can tackle more challenging problems. Sorting out the workplace isn't a high-skill activity. It's still an important activity, but learning the disciplines of improvement is absolutely critical before we move them on to more challenging issues. So there's 3 reasons for that. Getting started, how do we get started on the journey? We've found that the best starting point is to run a maintenance excellence management awareness workshop, typically a 1-day workshop, using the maintenance self-assessment tool to get everyone to assess. So the idea is that you give people a framework for what is best practice for each one of the elements, and you get them to assess each element. By being in a group, they can actually share how they assess, and it helps people to understand their perception compared to everyone else's perceptions. So it helps normalize some of the results so you get a more accurate answer rather than have people just go off and do it individually. We also try to get the site leadership team members to attend because they're the ones who need to understand maintenance excellence. They're the ones managing the business, and maintenance should be seen as the value-adding critical activity for the business, not some extraneous cost of how do we get rid of it, how do we contract it out. It's got to be seen as a very value-adding activity. So leadership, all leadership, including your accountant, etc., should be attending the workshop and learning about what maintenance excellence is all about. Then you want to set up a maintenance excellence leadership team. Now, if you're a small site, this would be part of the site leadership team. They just spend an extra 10 minutes each week talking about maintenance excellence. If it's a large site, obviously you have a separate maintenance excellence leadership team under the guidance of the maintenance manager and direct reports. And thirdly, sit down and take the results of the maintenance self-assessment survey results and the feedback from the workshop and the comments from the workshop, and set some long-term targets and a plan for your first cycle, and then have ongoing pre-cycle strategies to continually work on the things that are critical, work on what's going to reduce time lost initially, and then start working on some of the elements. And we try to do that in parallel. So what's been our learnings from all this? Use a self-assessment tool to engage your maintenance personnel so they see the need for improvement. Initially focus on time lost, as the improvement will free up resources and remove frustrations. Ensure all improvement teams are successful. Remember, success breeds success. So we have the team break it into, we tend to use 12-week cycles, get them to analyse what they're going to do for the first, say, 6 weeks, present, give a presentation to management saying this is what we want to do, why, what we're going to get out of it, and you can make sure their mandate, what you want them to achieve, is feasible and they're going to achieve it. If not, you adjust the mandate, then make sure that they, at the end of the cycle, they are successful. And that's why using a structured step process with cycles spanning no longer than 12 to 14 weeks, again, is very critical. So our final messages as we wrap up, unless the focus of your organisation's improvement journey is the ongoing development of your people through both cross-functional teams and area-based teams, and maintenance involves both cross-functional teams and area-based teams, your quest to achieve and sustain operations excellence will become a dream rather than a reality. And the most successful sites are those that have fun making things happen. That's why when we set teams up, we make sure they have team rules and they have consequences. So if someone doesn't turn up on time, hey, next meeting they bring the Tim Tams or they bring a bag of lollies. Or we have a bit of fun with it, but it helps people to recognise the importance of discipline of, hey, we're here to get something done, we've got limited time, make sure I turn up when I should. So just to finish up, how can we help? We on our webpage there's some great information to help you, some good papers, etc. There is the booklet, 48-page booklet from Coopers. They've got some great articles about what their maintenance excellence activities have been in there, so it's well worth the read. The other thing is that if you want to get a full picture of where this maintenance fits right into the whole operations excellence journey, strongly recommend you to send your key people to our 2-day workshops, which Samantha's already spoken about. And with that, I've gone over by 4 minutes, so I apologise for that. But hopefully that's given you a bit of a picture on maintenance excellence. So question time.
Great. So thank you, Ross. So if anyone has any questions, if you want to stick around and have any questions, just press your raise the hand button now or type your questions in the control panel provided. While we're waiting, Ross, I have a quick question for you. So if you have a difficult maintenance group who believe that they're actually doing a really good job, so they're thinking that everyone else is stuffing up the plant, how do you get them engaged in the improvement activities?
Good question, Samantha. I guess our experience has been, first up, what we try to do at a site is to break down the barriers between production and maintenance and management and everything, and we try to run focused equipment and process improvement cross-functional teams focused on not the maintenance department but the actual defined production areas, and we talked about that in the previous webinar. So getting maintenance people involved in that, they start to see hopefully a bigger perspective of what's required to get the equipment to work properly, what the frustrations are of the operators, etc. And we've found doing that for 1 or 2 cycles with the maintenance people really gets a number of them to start seeing the world a little differently. Then they'll be quite supportive to help us introduce maintenance excellence. So that's just one strategy we've used successfully at a number of sites.
Oh, excellent. Okay, there doesn't seem to be any other questions. So thank you for attending. And just a reminder that our next CTPM webinar will be scheduled on Tuesday the 8th of July. So pencil it in. It's going to be about how do you ensure your new equipment adds value to your business. But if you think of any questions, please feel free to contact us at any time, even if you just require some more information or just like to have a chat. So we hope everyone...
Or if they've got any future topics they'd like us to focus on.
And that as well. But any future topics, please let us know, and we're happy to put that in our schedule. Other than that, better let you get back to work. So have a great rest of the week, and we hope to see you at our next webinar.